Welcome back, America. We're with Ron Dermer, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister, War Cabinet member, confidant of the Prime Minister. You'll always be Mr. Ambassador to me, Ron Dermer. Mr. Ambassador, the money that's flowing into Iran and from Iran flowing into all these terrorist operations and so forth, shouldn't more be done by my country, the United States, by Europe, by other countries, to stop the flow of money pouring into Iran as a result of these exports of oil? I mean, that was the case just a few years ago. Now they're flush with cash.
Absolutely. Nothing good will come from giving money to Iran. Just so your viewers know, Iran is responsible for 93% of Hamas's military budget. They're responsible for 100% or so, around 100% of Hezbollah's budget. They're responsible for the Houthis, arming and financing them. They're responsible for the Shia militias who are attacking the United States in its bases in the region. Iran is the head of the snake. Iran is the problem in the region, and giving them money for any reason doesn't help. What should happen now is the toughest sanctions should be put on Iran. They should be enforced because there are tough sanctions on Iran. But also, United Nations Security Council sanctions should be snapped back. Mark, just a few weeks ago, one of the Security Council sanctions, you remember that nuclear deal with Iran that was done a few years ago? Well, in that deal, all of these Security Council sanctions began to sunset. And after 5 years, there were no arms restrictions on Iran. And after 8 years, it became missile restrictions. Well, who do you think's lobbing all these missiles at Israel right now? We've had 10,000 rockets fired at us. Where are those missiles coming? They're coming from Iran. Who, by the way, is providing Russia with the drones and missiles that they're using against Ukraine? That's Iran. Why are they not snapping back the sanctions in the UN Security Council? Now, the United States, thankfully, withdrew from the deal a few years ago, but Britain and France are still in that deal. Why are they in that deal? Why not snap back UN Security Council sanctions? Why not pressure Iran? Why not enforce the oil sanctions? And you should know, and your viewers should know, Mark, that around 90% of the oil that Iran is selling is going to China. But there's no secondary sanctions that are being put in place. And right now, Iran is north of 2 million barrels a day that they're exporting. That's almost where they were before President Trump decided to withdraw from the nuclear deal with Iran. So the sanctions are not being enforced. And I implore the Biden administration to enforce those sanctions on Iran, to squeeze Iran, because all the money that goes to Iran, it's not going to a GI Bill for returning members of the Revolutionary Guard. It's going to fund Iran's war machine in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Gaza, in Yemen, everywhere else. And Iran is your enemy. They're the enemy of Israel, but they're the enemy of America. And nothing good will go from giving money to Iran. And so I hope the United States will come together, as it should, in enforcing the toughest sanctions against Iran and putting a credible military threat on Iran to ensure that they don't have any ideas about breaking ahead and trying to get a nuclear weapon, because their nuclear weapons program keeps advancing and keeps advancing. They have to face a credible military threat. They have to face crippling sanctions. And the third thing, this is very important because people have forgotten that. A year ago, if we were having this conversation, you remember there were protests throughout Iran. The Iranian people hate their regime. They should be given the support of the world right now. Those Iranian people are the key to a better future for Iran and the United States and Israel. There's no reason why Iran cannot be a partner of the United States. But this regime in Iran is an enemy. So crippling sanctions, credible military threat, support the people of Iran. Don't forget about them. They're the key to having a better future for the region.
And the problem is I'm not seeing any of this, I'm seeing the opposite of this. And so on your point about nukes, okay, what happens if Iran gets a nuke? What happens to the Middle East then? What happens to any leverage the United States has then? What happens to the United States then? I don't see any relentless effort to stop Iran from getting nukes, other than maybe some diplomatic yip-yap behind the scenes. But other than that, nothing. Do you see something?
Well, I definitely don't see enough, but I'll tell you, October 7th was a wake-up call for Israel. And as you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu has made it very clear for many, many years that Israel is going to do whatever it has to do to stop Iran from developing nuclear weapons. And that commitment still holds. But I think now the people of Israel understand the dangers we face on our border. Hamas is on our southern border. And as you said, a caliphate of Hamas on our southern border. And we got another caliphate on our northern border in Hezbollah. And I think the people of Israel understand the danger of a nuclear Iran. To have these types of terror proxies that are threatening your population, that are literally hundreds of yards away from your civilian population, to have these very powerful terror organizations backed by an Iranian nuclear umbrella will be a catastrophe for Israel, a catastrophe for the Middle East, and a catastrophe for the world, which is why Israel is going to do whatever it has to do to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. But I think the key to a strategy that will work at stopping them from achieving their goal, and Iran is a regime, as you know, that calls openly for the destruction of Israel and that works every day for the destruction of Israel. They're the ones that are behind all of these proxies that are attacking Israel now. The important thing is to have that three-legged policy that I talked about, a credible military against the nuclear breakout, crippling sanctions to put the economic squeeze on Iran, and a real diplomatic effort not to speak to the leaders of Iran, to actually speak to the people of Iran, to embrace the dissidents of Iran. That's a policy that will work. It worked with the Soviet Union, and it will work with Iran.
When we come back, Mr. Ambassador, civilian casualties. I'm not talking about Gaza. I'm talking about the rest of the Arab world. That is the slaughter that goes on day in and day out in Iran, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, in all these countries which really do practice Islamophobia, one against the other. Don't you find it a little ironic that here you are trying to defend yourselves in the most humane way possible, like no army on the face of the earth, with all these restrictions and all these obstacles, and yet all your neighbors who complain about civilian casualties are busy slaughtering their own people? We'll be right back.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.